This is Sawyer Robertson, and you're listening to the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Welcome into the Bearcast on SicEm365.com, presented by WellMed Medical Management and Barefoot Campus Outfitter. Head on over to Barefoot Campus Outfitter in Waco, or go to the website and use SicEm365 as your code to save 15% off your purchase. Be sure to buy some gear for this weekend against Kansas State and for future weekends ahead for Baylor football games at home and on the road. Today, Colt, Barber, and I are going to preview the Kansas State game for this weekend. The Bears currently sitting at 3-2, 1-1 in the Big 12, trying to get some momentum heading into the bye week. Colt, I know you gave your initial thoughts earlier this week on our premium mailbag, but has anything kind of changed for you now that, we're kind of midway through the week and trying to, figure out these two opponents?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anything will change until we get the final injury reports and just exactly what's going on there. I think both of these staffs will keep everything that they have close to vest until that last moment, listing as probable or out or whatever it is. So, there's some key guys like Jace Brown for Kansas State at receiver. He's electric whenever he has the ball in his hands, but he missed last week against UCF and not playing in that game. They won the game. But that's a big asset for them at receiver. Jerron Bradley is their kind of what they expected to be their number 2. He hasn't played in a while. I would be surprised if both of those guys are back, but if they are, it could change this game a little bit for Baylor's defense. But in general, these teams are kind of what they are in my mind. I think Kansas State feels a little bit better about their offense right now, but we don't really know a ton about UCF either. UCF hasn't really been tested other than Kansas State in that way. But at the end of the day, this is Baylor playing a home game. They're favored by 6.5, and I want to get into this in a minute, but favored by 6.5, and that's just not something that they've really had that type of favoritism, I guess is the best way to put it, at home in a really long time. We've talked about their home record, but this is what Baylor needs to do, is go out and win this game. I don't care if Kansas State has guys healthy or not. They played with Jace Brown this year. They played with Jerron Bradley, and they're 2-3, and they could very easily be 1-4 with a potential loss to North Dakota in there as well. So Baylor is a team that should be able to win this game at home. That's my final thought going into this weekend night. I don't care what Kansas State does differently this weekend. Baylor should win this game. They need to win this game.
Yeah, and I mentioned that in my article this week. I draw a lot of the facts that I get for this podcast from the premium article that I write every single week that usually drops on Thursdays for, keys to the game takeaways. And once again, I mean, I've mentioned it for their first 2 home games, the big games against Auburn and Arizona State, just how bad they've been at home. You mentioned the record at home. They're 4-12 against Power 4 schools in McLean Stadium since 2022, 1-9 in games that I would classify as big games, not in games against, 3-6 teams or teams that, are bad, which, this one kind of fits that category. Honestly, I don't even know if I would classify this one as one of those big games for this team. But I just think in general, there are so many parallels between this game and the game against Texas Tech last year. And I think that is one of the things that has stood out the most to me, kind of looking over this team and trying to figure out, what's their path going forward. But last year, they came into that Texas Tech game off the bye week, and they were 2-4. And I mentioned it a million times that they had to win that game. If they didn't win that game, I felt like Dave Aranda was going to get fired. I felt like the season was going to go off the rails. It just really had a feeling of that. This game kind of does too, to be honest. And a lot of it is because of the schedule coming up. Some of it is just momentum of the program. Some of it is, if you can't beat Kansas State at home, why am I going to pick you to win any game at home the rest of the season? Maybe UCF, but again, we'll see. We'll see on that. We'll see what, Baylor's mental makeup is at that time, because let's not forget, they get Kansas State at home this weekend. Let's say they lose that game. Then they have to go to TCU and to Cincinnati, 2 teams that are playing pretty good football right now. Yeah. It just does not bode well. There's a chance they're sitting there at 3-5. And then for the 3rd straight year in a row, they're kind of starting to have to deal with distractions and, potential rumors about, Dave Aranda getting fired, potential, just all kinds of stuff you don't want to have to deal with again, because they've already had to deal with it the last few years. This game is very important for the program and very important for Dave Aranda's tenure at Baylor in my eyes.
Yeah. So we talked about the betting lines for these Baylor's home games against Power 4 teams going back to 2022. I didn't record the ones for Auburn and Arizona State. Do you know what those games closed at for the betting lines off the top of your head? If not, it's not a big deal.
I'll look while you're going through it.
So going back to 2022 home games against Power 4, I'm gonna run through these and then make some points. Baylor 2.5 point favorite over Oklahoma State. Baylor 10.5 point favorite over Kansas. Baylor 2.5 point favorite over Kansas State. Baylor +3 against TCU. That was the close 2022. 2023, Baylor +7 against Utah. Baylor +14.5 versus Texas. Baylor +2.5 versus Texas Tech. Baylor +3 against Iowa State. Baylor +2 against Houston. Baylor +11.5 versus West Virginia. So that was all 2023 home games against Power 4 opponents. 2024, Baylor -3 against BYU. -6.5 versus Oklahoma State, -3 versus TCU, +2.5 versus Kansas. I kind of forgotten about that one, Kansas being favored in that game. Then Baylor going into this game, Baylor's 6.5 point favorites. In games that Baylor has been home 6.5 point favorites in the last 3 years was against Kansas in 2022, which they won by 11 or 12. And then again in 2024, and they're 6.5 point favorites against Oklahoma State, and they won by 10. This is a game that aligns with more similar to that than the rest of the games. Baylor's 6.5 points favorites against Kansas State. Like, they haven't had many of these opportunities in the last 3 years. Like, you have to win this game. Like, this is a game that you are projected to win based on all odds. Even compared to the last year against Kansas, when Kansas was 2.5 point favorites in Waco. There was some uncertainty still about Baylor, but Kansas was playing really well at that point. This is a game that you can't justify losing. You're a touchdown favorite at home. On a neutral site, you would be favorite, and more than likely, you'd be like a 2-point favorite if you're playing this game at Kansas State. So I'm backs are not up against the wall, but this is a game you just feel like it has to be a must-win.
Real quick, Sawyer Robertson has something to remind you about.
Want the latest information about your favorite team? Try out Sigum 365 premium content the next 3 months for just $5 by clicking the link below.
And now back to the Bearcast. Yeah, it kind of feels like the backs are up against the wall. Yeah. I can't stress this enough. If you can't beat this team, the teams that they're playing going forward are just as good, if not better, aside from UCF. I mean, maybe Houston, but you can convince yourself of different things. But it's like, man, dude, if you can't win this game, it's going to be hard to win these other games.
Yeah, it resets the goal line.
Yes,
if you lose this game, like you're saying, okay, 9-3. I mean, 10-2 is on the table because you have that. That's what's on the table, right? You have 7 more games you could get there. Say 9-3 is your goal, 8-4 maybe kind of your goal in that area. If you lose this game, you're saying let's get to bowl eligibility. That changes the dynamics. It changes the math drastically.
And just adding to your list, Baylor was a 2.5 point favorite against Arizona State earlier this year, and then they were +2.5 against Auburn.
Yeah, so a lot of games right in that like teeter either way. You're home. You're getting the points because you're at home. And Baylor hasn't won those games the majority of the time. Yeah,
and I mean, also in fairness, the average defeat is like 2 touchdowns. So if you average it out, so it's not like every game's been close though either. Some have, but some have been pretty ugly as well. So definitely need to change that. So Colt, I think the first place I want to start this week, when I was doing my research, a lot of times over the years, I've mentioned, when Baylor runs for 150 yards, good things happen, right? And so I wanted to kind of go back and just see, Dave Aranda's entire tenure. So this includes, horrible year in 2020, horrible year in 2023, obviously the really good year in 2021, and then a lot of in between with some of these other seasons. But I found this number to be interesting as I was going through it. And this is something that, 150 is just a general number, but it seems to be a trend for the Bears. So over the last 2 seasons, Baylor is 10-1 when they run for over 150 yards. And the only loss during that time span, during these past 2 years, was to Colorado, in which Colorado converted a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
So
11-1 basically.
11-0. That's the only loss.
11-1, right? Or it's 11-0. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, should have been a win.
That is a steady trend. That is a trend that matters going into this matchup. But even deeper than that, if you want to extend it over the entire Dave Aranda era, Baylor's 28-7 when it runs for over 150 yards, including this current streak of 10-1. It's been very consistent that when they're able to run the football, they're able to win games. That was consistent with Grimes, and now it's consistent with Jake Spavital as the coach as well. And then it allows you to dive even deeper, right? What's Kansas State not been good at this year? Stopping the run. That's been an area where they have had some real problems. And I think it goes back further than that. When I looked into it last year, Kansas State started last season 5-1. They were allowing only 71.6 yards rushing per game. They were dominant against the run to start the year. The rest of the season, they finished 4-3, and they were giving up 160 yards rushing per game. A lot changed for them later in the season. Again, I don't know if that's due to injuries. I don't know. There's probably other circumstances. I'm sure competition level for sure, but still the stats very much bear out this truth that, Baylor's really good when they run for over 150 yards. K-State is last year, they struggled when they started giving up rushing yards. And now you look at this season, they lost some key pieces, particularly up front and at the linebacker position. And now they're giving up 181.6 rushing yards per game, but it gets even worse. In the last 3 games against Army, Arizona, UCF, they've allowed 3 straight games of over 205 rushing yards.
Yeah.
That's where the trend is. To me, that is the trend that matters. If Baylor runs for 150 yards, they're winning this football game. Baylor should run for 200 yards because we've seen offenses like Arizona and UCF do that. I see no reason why Baylor shouldn't be able to do that at home.
Yeah, and even going back to the Iowa State game, the beginning of this year, which was in Ireland or wherever it was, I remember watching that game, and it was back and forth. Like, it was an ugly game early, but then it was second half, Iowa State just said, okay, we're going to run the football. And it was like there was a drive in there where it was like the Hansen kid for Iowa State was just like 10 yards. And I don't have the stats in front of me. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like Iowa State took control of that game with the rushing offense. And Iowa State ends up winning 24-21. But it was the separation because of Iowa State's ability to run the ball. Iowa State got up 24-14. Kansas State answered with a big play touchdown, but that game when it was 24-14 just felt over. And it was when they started running the football. And then you look at the yards per carry in those last 3 games that you just mentioned. I had just pulled this up as well. Army averaged 3.39, which that's what Army does. Like, they don't throw the football like that, but they ran for 237 yards on 70
K-State couldn't
carries.
get on the field. They only had 6 possessions because Army just they took the game to them, and K-State played their game. I mean, that's what happens against service academies.
Yeah, no, it does. And obviously Baylor fans are accustomed to that against that Air Force team back in 2022 in the bowl game. But then Arizona, 5.2 yards per carry, UCF 6.2 yards per carry. And then what Kansas State does pretty well this year is that they're sacking the quarterback. And right now they're number 3 in the league in overall games, but in FBS Power 4 games, they're number 2 in the league with 9 sacks, and that's per game average is 3, and they're number 2. So you take away their sacks that are getting in that situation, the rushing stats are even worse.
Right.
Baylor has to go in and say, hey, we're going to run the football in this game. And I think getting Bryson Washington, hopefully he's healthy. I mean, I think we feel pretty good about him after what Dave Aranda said. But those 3 running backs, including Michael Turner, I mean, dude, maybe they should combine for 40 carries in this game. I mean, like, I know that we talked about it with the Oklahoma State game, but I think this is another opportunity to go out there and kind of impose your will and then take the top off the defense, because I think Kansas State's susceptible to explosive plays on defense as well in the passing game. So there's a way to Baylor's offense doing well, but it's also controlling the pace and keeping Kansas State's offense, which has kind of found some life, off the field.
Right. I think the key that you mentioned there is, K-State's given up some explosive plays in the passing game, but typically on standard base downs, they've been really good against the pass. You have to be able to wear down their front 7 and force their safeties to start creeping up a little bit. That's where you can really attack them in the secondary, because if Baylor's not able to run the football, you should have some major concerns about Baylor winning this game, because K-State's secondary is actually pretty dang good. I mean, statistically, they're the best secondary Baylor's faced this year by a rather large margin. And so I think that that's going to be an interesting conundrum. But I do think that when you look at the run game specifically, there's a bye week coming. Like, this is not the time where you rest Bryson Washington. Like, there's a bye week.
Yeah.
He gets
unless he's injured. Well,
actually injured, like to where he can't play. Okay.
Yeah.
But banged
They just
up,
need him healthy. They
different.
need him.
Yeah.
They need him healthy enough to go in this game. That was my point on that.
And they have to ride. They have to give him carries. I like Michael Turner. I like Caden Knighton a whole lot. They got a lot of run last week. This really needs to be a Bryson game. Like, this can't be a game where he has 10 carries. Like that's what are we doing? Like, when you brought him back, it's to be a workhorse running back. He's only played really 13 games in his career, 14 games, something along those lines. Like, he's fresh. Like, you got guys in the NFL who had, 300 and, something carries in their college career and are running great. Bryson needs to get those kind of carries this week, and he's going to have to get those carries in these big matchups. And this is a must win. And even bigger than that, you have the bye week. So if he does get banged up this week, you have a whole bye week to get him right and get him healthy, get him rest, all of those things. He's going to need a lot of carries in this game. Even though I like the other running backs, they really do need to ride Bryson, I think, to a win this week.
I'm going back to the explosive play deal, and these are numbers that are Power 4 numbers only. Kansas State, after the UCF game, they gave up a ton of explosives to UCF. I mean, UCF took advantage of them in this area. Overall plays of 30-plus yards against Power 4 teams, Kansas State ranks number 11 in explosive play rate at 3.77. So 8 30-yard plays that they've given up against Power 4 competition. Against the run of 10-plus yards, they are number 9 in the Big 12. In defending this, and then in passing, they're number 9 in rush rate in explosive passing. Let me start over. Kansas State is number 9 in the Big 12 in explosive passing rate in 20-plus yards. So like you said, you get set up against the run, then you hit them over the top. The rushing explosive rate for Kansas State, they are number 7 in the Big 12 with a 12.9. So every carry for over 10 yards comes at 12.9% of the carries. Teams are getting to the second level on them, just not as consistently as in the passing game. Whenever you can take off the defense, you can take the top off the defense. I'm stumbling all over my words here with this. You are exactly right. It's interesting because I think that the Kansas State versus Army game pulled their rushing average down because they're not getting a lot of explosives. If you watch all of the other games, they're giving up those 10-plus yard rushes, and then they're getting hit over the top. So it's a weird Kansas State defense going back to last year. I think Baylor has the opportunity to take advantage and have control of this game.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the explosive pass plays they've allowed, and yes, they have allowed those, but I do think this is going to be a real challenge for Baylor. When you look at kind of what Kansas State's done against the other 3 Big 12 teams they faced, Iowa State, Arizona, and UCF, they've held opponents to a 48.8 completion percentage while only averaging 186 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. They've held each opponent below their season average by at least 40 yards and a just outstanding 14% completion points lower than what they typically average. That's really good. And that's the danger area for me in this game for Baylor is that, this trend has to end. If Baylor comes out here and it's just like, we're going to throw the ball 50 times and we're only going to run it, 20, 25 times, I just think it's a recipe for failure. And unfortunately, that's kind of been some of the distribution we've seen in a few of the games this year. And I just don't think that is the path to success this week. And I know you want to see Sawyer putting up big numbers. I know it's awesome to see him leading the nation in passing yards and passing touchdowns. But what they really need from Sawyer this week and the receivers is efficiency in the passing game. It doesn't have to be a ton of throws. It doesn't have to be, a ton of, explosive plays. It just really has to be when you get opportunities to make a big play, score a touchdown, or get a first down. Those are the plays that they really need to make in the pass game, because that's assuming that they run the ball well, which again, I think they're going to need to going into this game. I will say on the flip side, Kansas State hasn't faced a passing game like Baylor's, even though, Iowa State's pretty good, but I do think that Ireland game was a little fluky, especially for the offenses in those games. Sure. But looking at Baylor, I mean, the areas where they might have success in the pass game are simply this. I mean, Kansas State hasn't faced any receivers this year with over 270 receiving yards. Not a single one, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like going through and looking at their schedule, they haven't faced anyone with over 270 receiving yards. Baylor has 4 guys over that number. So it could be a little bit of one of those where maybe their numbers are pushed up a little bit because of who they've played. But in general, based on what we know right now, that does seem to be their strength in the secondary with this defense.
Yeah, and I haven't gone through to look at like what UCF has done specifically against other teams. I mean, we know they scored 17 points against Jacksonville State or whatever it was. They beat up on North Carolina throwing, or in general, I don't know about what they did throwing the football. I think a biggest differentiator between this game and what Kansas State has faced this year is part of the passing offense and what Baylor's able to do there. But Kleiman mentioned this in his press conferences, the tempo of this offense and what they faced. So I went back. I was like, I'm just curious. What are the seconds per play for what they faced this year? So this didn't include North Dakota because it's not registered in the stats. But Iowa State ranked 79th in the country in seconds per play at 27. Army 27.8 and they're ranked number 94. UCF ranks 109th at 28.4. Wow. Where do you think Baylor is without looking?
Oh man, Baylor's got to be like, I mean, and they've been down in some games too. I bet they're like top 5.
Number 5, 22.2. Yeah. And so I'm really anxious to see how they handle Baylor's tempo. Not that Kansas State isn't used to playing tempo. They play the Big 12 every year. They play teams that go with tempo. But this is a fast offense compared to what this specific defense, who has struggled against the run. So if Baylor can push this issue in the run game, I'm really anxious to see what happens with the rushing numbers. If you get in and you're trying to go fast and then you get stuffed, that creates issue. But I want to see Baylor go tempo and run. I think that could be a big deal, but it also helps open up the top of the defense as well. Whenever you are running it in tempo and then you go play action after you get a 6 or 7 yard gain on first down. Baylor needs to win on first down running the football, but I think that tempo could really come into effect here. Kleiman's already mentioned, I mean, for him to vocalize that in a press conference setting when they face tempo teams all the time, obviously they're concerned about it in this particular game.
Yeah, and I think another good point about that is just so far this year, Kansas State hasn't really trusted their depth on the defensive line. They're not playing a ton of guys there, which is kind of not typical for them. They usually have a really good rotation of defensive line guys. And they don't this year. They have a few really good players on their defensive line, but they don't have a whole group like they normally do, a whole consistent group. And that's shown so far this year. So yeah, I mean, if you can wear them down up front with that tempo that they haven't seen so far, yeah, you can definitely do some things that are pretty intriguing. All right, Colt, let's move to the defensive side here for the Bears, where Baylor has really struggled a lot. And we've seen that. And I think this is a good week to find out maybe how bad they are or, how good they are or whatnot. We've mentioned this week a little bit, but Kansas State is somewhere between, the 55th best offense in the country to the 70th best offense in the country, depending on what advanced analytics site you like. That's kind of where they hover. Mm-hmm. That's around the same area as your UCF and your Arizona, who Baylor play later this year. It's slightly worse than Utah, and it's slightly better than Houston. And then obviously TCU and Cincy are much, much higher. But I think this gives us a good baseline for kind of who Baylor is going to be this year, the rest of this season. I know there's a bye week coming up, so maybe some things can change, but I do think that this matchup should be one that if Baylor plays well, it should give you confidence that the defense should be okay in those matchups that I mentioned later in the year when you face Utah, Arizona, and Houston. At least there should be some confidence on display going into those matchups. But one thing that I mentioned earlier this week that I think is probably the most important thing for Baylor's defense the rest of the way is what are they going to be good at this year? Like what is going to make them stand out? Last year, they were really good on third down. Last year, they were really good in the red zone. So even though the defense wasn't good, they had those big moments and they had those plays where you're forcing field goals or getting teams off the field. And that's really huge. That's really key for them. But I think in general, they haven't done any of that this year. They haven't done any of those. And then, of course, the turnover margin flipped for Baylor at the end of last year as well. And they're not forcing turnovers currently. So it's like, what are you going to be good at? And this is a good matchup to kind of find that out because K-State's not good on third down. They're not good in the red zone. They're not good on fourth down. Is Baylor going to force turnovers in this game? K-State's giving it up a few times. They've turned it over some. It's just kind of what's that next step? Because I don't think we're going to see a dominant defense this year. I think that just is what it is. But you have to be good at certain things, whether that's getting sacks, stopping the run, pass defense, third down conversion defense, red zone defense, forcing turnovers. You have to be good at something. And right now, Baylor's really not good at anything.
Yeah, I think so. What I go back to, and I was actually charting this earlier and figuring out where the defensive line for Baylor had been playing. And the game that we've seen Baylor relatively healthy, obviously start the Auburn game, but it was the Arizona State game. And if you're going to match up with a similarity between offenses, it's Arizona State and Kansas State are going to be probably as close as you find in terms of what they want to do running the football. And Baylor went a straight 3-man front in that game. And they played a lot around the line of scrimmage. And it was nice because you had Jackie healthy, you had DK healthy, who hadn't been healthy. Neither one of those had been healthy. Cooper's out. Devontae Tesno had been healthy, and has been playing. He's kind of been the lone ranger in terms of health, and he started off the season a little bit banged up as well with his foot injury. But this is going to be a game where I think, and I've gone back and forth on what I think Baylor's going to do. I think they're either going to be in a 3-man heavy box set, or they're going to be in their dime package in the third and long situations. I don't think it's going to be a game where we see a lot of peso. And I think for this particular defense, that needs to be their approach of, okay, we're just going to go and take one thing away. What's this one thing going to be? Because if we try to play a base defense and we just try to come out and just play you straight up, we're just methodically going to beat us down the field. But if we can take one thing away, what is it going to be? And I think in this game, I don't know what the better solution is for stopping the run game for Kansas State in this game, because I almost want to see them play a dime and get guys that are getting DJ Coleman, Kendrick Simpkins, your linebackers, your edges who are good tacklers on the field, but also understand the back and forth of, do you want more size against Kansas State's offensive line? And I keep going back to the Arizona State game. That front played solid. I think that's the best route, and I think you just say, hey, we're going to be physical, we're going to be tough on the interior, and we're going to make Avery Johnson beat us downfield. He might get some in the run game, but we want him to beat us downfield as well. And Baylor has to do that as a defense right now. We're going to take one thing away. We can't play straight up to take everything away. We're not that good in personnel. We've shown that over and over since the last few years. But we feel like we can take your run game away to a great extent by playing this heavy 3-man front that we haven't truthfully seen a lot, especially now that Cooper's healthy.
I think that's the route they should go to. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me either if they are in some peso, but that's more so just because Amari and Winston can kind of play as your hand in the dirt guy. So you could do that. I think also having Cooper Lands back gives them more flexibility here. They didn't have him versus Arizona State. That wasn't the difference in the game, but it could have been. Like, if he had a really good performance, maybe it could have been. And so I think that is the route they need to go. I think stopping the run first and foremost is going to be very important. And Kansas State's going to challenge them in some unique ways. The quarterback run game obviously is a part of that. They also have a very fast running back in Dylan Edwards. And that's
where I go to the dime. That's where I think about the dime being impactful.
Yeah, and it could be. I just also think they already saw Raleek Brown, and Dylan Edwards I don't think he's as good as Raleek Brown. And Raleek hurt them. Like, he had a good game against Baylor, but he didn't kill them.
Yeah. He didn't not as bad. It's not as bad as you honestly felt like going into the game. He had 80 yards rushing for 3.7 yards per carry. It was a moderate game for him.
Then he showed up against TCU and had like 150 yards of total offense or something like that. So he's a really dynamic player. So I don't think Dylan Edwards is much different than that. The one thing that is a little different, and this is probably more what you're speaking to with the dime, is that Kansas State likes to spread you out in the run game more than Arizona State does. Arizona State's going to run it right at you. Like, they're going to run in between the tackles. They're going to run in between the guards. Like, they're going to run the football up the middle. Whereas K-State, for a lot of that game against UCF, it felt like they were doing everything they could to really get outside the tackles and allow Dylan to kind of cut up field when he saw an opening, or get around the tackle and create an explosive that way. That's where it could matter. But I think in general, I think you need to focus on taking away the QB run first, which is going to be more so up the middle. and then worry about Dylan Edwards second. That's kind of how I look at the run, because I do think if they're going to get caught up in just trying to run off tackle the whole game, I think they'll run into some problems at times with tackles for loss, getting behind the chain. So even though you might give up a couple here and there, I think that's a better solution than if you're in that dime and then they start running the ball up the middle of the field with their quarterback in Wildcat packages. I think that's going to be really hard to stop with that specific formation. K-State also showed this week they're going to bring in their backup quarterback, and he's going to run the football out of the Wildcat, especially since Baylor struggled with it this past week against Oklahoma State. I think we're going to see a lot of him. He's just a bruiser. He's going to get them, 4 or 5 yards. That's what they're hoping for, a carry up the middle and just wear you down and limit Avery Johnson's hits as well.
Yeah. You talked about the Arizona State game. So Devontae Tesno and DK Kalu played strictly B gap in that game. There was no nose tackle. So it was just, they were at 64 and 60 snaps in the B gaps. And then you had Jackie Marshall, who was the main guy on the outside. He played off tackle, over tackle the majority of that game, 60 snaps of his 70 plus snaps. And so those are the three guys that Baylor had. And I don't know, does Jackie move? Does he slide back inside? Where is he playing? But I really liked him on the edge in that particular game. That's where Cooper would typically play. Like, you look back to the Auburn game, Cooper played primarily, at that the outside shadow of a tackle. And then Jackie's been doing it. I like both of them there. I think you can play Jackie anywhere. And that's what kind of gives me hope in this game is, okay, how do you take away and you spill things to the outside? I like that approach against Arizona State, but Avery's just so fast. And not that Levitt wasn't. I think that's why they're so comparable. They're both so fast. They're both different. Obviously, you're not worrying about Jordan Tyson out there on the edge, but it's a fascinating situation to be in because you face such a similar style of offense. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing because you put it on tape for Kansas State to watch, but you've also got to practice it. You've got to see it so many times. And Baylor just has to be a good tackling team. Whatever they put out there, that's going to be the key to this defense is getting guys on the ground. That's where they struggled against Auburn, and they have improved that over the last few games. They have to be a good tackling team in this game.
I will say one key difference that when I watch a few of these guys play, and I think Levitt and Arnold have this more than Avery does. Arnold and Levitt just do some schoolyard stuff, and they are quick, and they're hard to tackle, and they're so elusive. And so they do all that, and then they're fast and strong, right? Avery, I don't see that on tape very much. Him just doing a whole lot of improv. No, he's a quarterback power. He's a designed run quarterback with great speed, but he's not the most elusive. He's not the most make you miss in the backfield, not to that level.
Avoid sacks, right?
Right. And so I do think that is an area that, again, I think that's where Baylor can more so focus on that. And they face two guys who, Jackson Arnold and Sam Levitt are two guys that are so good at avoiding sacks and at creating yardage out of nothing. And that is something that I don't think Avery brings to the same level. If he proves me wrong on Saturday, then that's probably going to be a problem for Baylor. But I haven't really seen that as much, even though he is very, very dangerous on designed quarterback runs. And he finally got his legs under him this past week. He hadn't been running it very well at all this year. And then last week he popped off for 75 yards rushing.
Yeah. So looking at this season only, he's had 7 scrambles for the entire season for 106 yards. So he does get yards on the scrambles. Now, I'm not watching those. I'm not seeing those visibly right now, so I can't tell you. But then it's his design runs of zone and gap schemes that he actually only has 56 yards on those. So he does get more from the scrambling, but I don't know what, is that a rollout? Is it an RPO type of scramble? What is PFF classifying?
They've been worse. They've been worse this year up front. I bet if you look at the past 2 years where he had 7 touchdowns each year, I would bet that he probably has more in the designed run game.
Right. He had last year 73 designed runs for 516 yards, scrambles 23 for 183. So he does break you down with his legs on the scramble, but it's more of the design. It's the opposite of Levitt. It's the opposite. Well, Arnold does more design. He does both. He's a little bit of both. It's a interesting difference of dual threat quarterbacks, what Avery is right now than what Baylor has faced, but it is a dual threat guy. And I think that's a good point though. I think this goes back to them. I don't remember if the last 3 years, it just felt like Kansas State was so old on the offensive line. They're just guys that have been there. This name's been here forever. This year, you look at their offensive line, and you don't feel that same way. You don't see the names that have been there long established, and I think it's shown up. I think you've seen the weaknesses in the offensive line, and I saw it against Army. There's a lot of guys in the backfield, and just watching their tape, you see it a little bit more than you have in the past, and that's for Baylor, who could go with just a heavy front compared to what they've been doing. I think that could be an advantage.
Absolutely. And just reiterating kind of what Baylor's gone through against dual threat quarterbacks. Jackson Arnold, 137 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Levitt, 62 yards and a touchdown. If Avery Johnson is around, kind of either of those numbers, then that's, kind of a tough day. Like if he has 60 yards and a touchdown, that's not, you won't lose the game because of it, but it definitely will feel pretty impactful if that's where he gets to. If you start allowing him to be up in the 90, over 100 yards, that's where you might really be kind of in trouble, because that means he's probably getting first downs or creating explosive plays or getting to the end zone, which he does have a knack for in the run game. So certainly something to watch, certainly something that I think is going to be very important. And like I said, when they bring in Blake Barnett, you'll kind of have a hammer back there running the football as well. And then they'll bring Dylan Edwards off tackle, or they'll, bring him in motion. They do a lot of creative things with him. And if they have Jace Brown, they'll kind of do similar things. Here he has like a 75-yard touchdown on a jet sweep type play. So they get creative in the run game. They've had to, because they haven't been as successful as they usually are. And they've had a really tough time replacing DJ Giddens, their star running back from last year, who is very different than Edwards. Like Edwards has a lot of speed and is quick. He kind of reminds you a little bit of like a Darren Sproles type. He's not as quick as Sproles, but similar running style, whereas Giddens was a thumper who was very fast. It was like physical power, and then he's like running away from people as well. So they've had trouble replacing him, and really they had trouble without Dylan Edwards earlier this year too. They don't really have great backups and great depth at the running back position. Yeah,
which could be something to watch. Dylan reminds me a lot of Squirrel Williams in a way. I think there's similarities from a Baylor perspective. Smaller, like you wonder how he holds up. I mean, I'm pulling it up. He's 5'9", 170.
Oh, he seems thick.
He may be thicker, he put together. Squirrel's a little bit wiry, but I think they're similar. I think there's that burst that they both provided. Just from a Baylor fan's perspective, I'm not saying that they're the same player, but Dylan has the production. I mean, last year he was a solid running back for them as a second running back. Looking at his stats, 546 yards, 5 touchdowns, which DJ Giddens was getting all the snaps last year, all the carries. He was really good. It's in general, this Kansas State team isn't. And it's their record speaks for that. They're 2-3. They could very easily be 1-4. UCF moved the ball when their quarterback was in the game. They missed the UCF missed their starting quarterback for about a quarter between the beginning of the second quarter to the middle of the third, which was interesting. He was like shoulder pads off, ice on his shoulders, and
it looked like he
was
crying when he left.
It was really strange. Like you rarely see that someone take their pads off on the sideline and then ultimately go back in the game and be somewhat successful. But when he was in the game, they were moving the ball pretty easily. Not easily. They had a lot of explosives and hit or miss in terms of consistency. But Kansas State's just not where we expect them to be as a program this season. And it happens. Like we've seen it. Obviously, we've seen it at Baylor. We've seen it at Oklahoma State's going through that similarity right now. But they're not on that level. It's just not the same as what we've seen in the last few years. I go back to my original point. You're favored by the touchdown. You're bringing Kansas State home to Waco. Like you haven't had these chances very often to say, hey, we're the clear-cut favorite in this game, speaking towards Vegas and betting lines. If you lose this game, that's a tough deal. Like, we can talk about predicting the game, predicting the score, but it's like you just got to win this game. Like you've got to figure out how to win it, because if you don't, it sets up for a really tough the last part of the season.
I kind of don't really care how it looks for this one. I just think like you got to find ways to win games at home and win in the Big 12, and any win is a step in the right direction compared to what we've seen over the last 3 years. And so, yeah, it's a big one. And it's one, like you said, they're favored. This should be just one of those you take care of business type games. I mean, I think they should win this game by at least a touchdown. That's how I view it. Yeah. But I also understand that Chris Kleiman is a heck of a coach, and his team is probably going to be ready to play. And even though they haven't looked good this year, they also haven't been blown out in any game this year. They've been in every single game. Their closest to a blowout was actually probably North Dakota, but they were able to rally back and win that one. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. It's one that I do think gives us a blueprint for what this season's going to look like. I really believe that. And I hate that we have to reiterate that all the time, but I'll just also say, like, you lose this game, and I think there's going to be a lot of whispers going into the bye week, and they're
as
rightfully
they should.
so.
Yeah, and they should. But I think you made a good point. You look through the schedule, and Auburn, SMU is kind of that way because you don't want to start all 0-2. But Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, like, Baylor hasn't had this middle of the road team in my mind in terms of matchup. Like, you couldn't lose the SMU game, even though they're kind of middle of the road this season. They have their own struggles, but like, this is a game that you're coming off Oklahoma State. You should have, like, you're 18-point favorites. You've played Arizona State at home, who has just won another game at home against TCU. Like, they're a solid team. They won the Big 12 last year. They went to the college football playoff. This is just a game that, like, you're playing a team at home that you're better than. And this is a game that you should win. It's just so much different than what they faced this year. And I know we can classify games differently. And you said it's like this projects a lot more to the rest of the season because there's a lot more teams that are more similar to Kansas State than I would say, and from a talent perspective, than Auburn, and from a team perspective, then I would say Arizona State, and then obviously Oklahoma State's, they're the number 16 in my power poll, for this week again. And so this is just a middle-of-the-road Big 12 team that you need to take care of business because there's a lot of middle-of-the-road Big 12 teams this year that you're going to face.
Absolutely. And Dave Aranda mentioned this, and I just kind of want to go back on it because I think that it should provide a little more incentive for this Baylor team. But let's not forget what has happened the last two times that Baylor has played Kansas State.
Not good.
It has been really bad. In 2022, Baylor was going into that game against K-State with a lot of confidence, a lot of momentum. That was one of those big games that I've mentioned. And you go into that game, Baylor's a 2-point underdog, actually, heading into that one. And they lose that game 31-3. Just get absolutely blown out. It's a blackout. It's this great environment, blown out, did not show up at all. And then in 2023, they go on the road to Kansas State, and they were a 21-point favorite, and they lost 59-25, and it didn't even feel that close. So it's been blowout city the last two matchups against K-State. So there should be a little bit of a chip there.
Just put the tape on,
and for Dave Aranda heading into this matchup as well. But a lot of schedule going forward, man. I mean, like, when I look through this is the Big 12 this year. There's a lot of teams that I just don't feel like are all that good or all that complete. And so as you look forward in the schedule, it's like you win this game, there's a path. There's a path to winning a lot more games, and going into the bye week at 4-2 instead of 2-4 that you were last year gives you some confidence in maybe who Baylor can be. But again, that requires winning on Saturday. So we'll see kind of how this all plays out. Colt, one thing before we head on out this week, I saw that Bill Connolly decided to write an article about the best quarterbacks in the entire country, I believe yesterday. And I went through it and I was like, okay, I'll probably just have to scroll a little bit to find Sawyer, right? I just scroll all the way down to the number 21 quarterback in the country. And within my swipes, I passed Chandler Morris, Luke Altmaier, a few other guys that I was like, seriously, to get to Sawyer Robertson at the end there. He is not the 21st quarterback in the country. That is just outrageous given the numbers he's put up and the schedule that Baylor's faced so far this year.
Yeah. I mean, I Gunnar Stockton, I mean, Georgia's great. Awesome. You just lost a game to Alabama, and I know Georgia, their talent, 851 passing yards this season.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is the list that we're on right now. I mean, great. He has an 88.2 QBR. I like whatever. Like that, he's number 20. He's one ahead. Like I don't watch the games, man.
That's
for real.
Yeah.
Watch the games.
That's where I'm at as well. There's some names on here. He even has Sorsby ahead of Sawyer Robertson, which, like, so I mean, he's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but also, did you watch them versus Nebraska? Like, he's the reason they lost that game because he couldn't throw the ball
Yeah.
5 yards on the field.
Or how about Fernando Mendoza, who is a Jake Spavital quarterback recruit, number 4 on this list.
Yeah.
I mean, 18 total touchdowns.
He's lighting it up.
Yeah, who they? I mean, they beat Illinois. I mean, congrats on beating Illinois. They beat Iowa 20-15. He threw for 2.
Illinois though.
He threw for Oh no doubt. I mean, they absolutely smoked him. But I'm just going through I mean, it's what are the, and maybe he put this at the top of the article. I'm gonna read real quick, but what are the parameters for these rankings?
Dude, well, we can go look at that, but I just have a question for you. Who would you say are the best 3 quarterbacks in the Big 12 right now? You wanted them on your team. Who would be the 3 that you're building?
There's
team?
So many freaking teams in the league now. It's hard to let me pull up. Let me just look at the Big 12 schedule here. Let me look at the Big 12 standings so I can think about names. I mean, Sam Leavitt I'm starting off from a quarterback perspective, a winner perspective. He would be up there.
He's number 31.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Who's next?
All right, Rocco Becht would be somewhere up there.
Okay, Rocco is sitting at 24.
Okay. Jalen Daniels, I saw him on the list. Are
you taking him over the ones you just named or Sawyer?
I'm just thinking about the list. I'm not taking him over Sawyer from he's turnover central for the majority of his career, always hurt. But I mean, Josh Hoover. Yeah, I would take Josh Hoover from Avia.
Who's at 23? So this is my problem with the list. We just named those quarterbacks, and the ones you named, I think, are the right answers. I think those are the best quarterbacks. But Brendan Sorsby is sitting at number 6 in the entire country.
Sorsby fine. I like him fine.
You him as a top 6 quarterback?
No. I'm saying no. I didn't say that. I said I like him fine. We're talking relative Big 12. I like him fine.
And then Jalen Daniels is number 10. I'm like, did Bill Connolly, the only Big 12 game he watched all year was last week, Cincy versus Kansas?
Those great defenses here.
Yeah, what are we doing? And then you have to scroll 10 spots, 11 spots before you get to the quarterbacks who are actually the best quarterbacks in the Big 12.
Okay, so Sorsby, I like Sorsby a lot. We can go back to last year and what he's capable. And maybe he's just saying, oh, he's a good runner. He can run as well as throw, and that's the reasoning. But he played Nebraska, and looking at just FEI top, defenses, Nebraska's going to be the highest on this list by a long shot. He threw for 13 of 25 for 69 yards and an interception.
Come on, man.
So he has he has an okay QBR because of his rushing game, which was 13 carries for 90. That sounds more to me like a Nebraska problem than a strength of Brendan Sorsby. I mean, look, I like Sorsby. I remember watching him against Tech last year, and he should have beat Tech last year in Lubbock.
Yeah.
And I was like, this kid's pretty good. But no, he's not a top 6. He's not I'm thinking 3 other quarterbacks over him in the Big 12.
Possible.
So I would take Jalen over him. I mean, truthfully,
it's close. They're the same to me. Healthy Jalen.
I think there's an argument to be made for Jalen of the runner creator. I like Sorsby as a creator, but Jalen's on a different level whenever he's doing those things. But I would take Sawyer, Hoover, probably Rocco over.
And definitely Leavitt for me.
Absolutely. So you're talking 5th on the list.
Yes.
And so, again, what are the parameters for ranking a list like this? I'm going to throw some crap against the wall, and I'm being serious.
That's what it felt like when I was reading this list, and the first 2 quarterbacks that I came across who were in the top 10 were Brendan Sorsby and Jalen Daniels. And I'm just like, man, I get that they put up numbers recently, but no one who watches the Big 12 thinks that those are the 2 best quarterbacks in the Big 12. The names you go to first are the 4 names you just mentioned. It's Sawyer Robertson, Josh Hoover, Rocco Becht, Sam Leavitt. Those are the 4 who I think are clearly the top 4. And then you get to Sorsby and Daniels, and that's no slight against them. It's a really good list in the Big 12. But come on, man. Come on. Sawyer leads the nation in passing yards and in passing touchdowns and in total touchdowns. He's tied with Mendoza, and he's had to play Auburn, SMU, and Arizona State already this year. What are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think it probably comes down to him. I think there's probably QBR going a lot into this. And that's a reason for Sawyer Robertson having a high QBR last year was because of what? He had the ability and willingness to run the football in key situations. He's not doing that this year, so his QBR is suffering. And so, like, we can start talking about QBR, and I love QBR from a college football perspective when guys are running around a lot. But the appropriate rating for right now for Sawyer Robertson is QB rating, not QBR. They're different metrics. And so, like, Jalen Daniels' QB rating, Sawyer Robertson's QB rating this year, I'm not sure where he ranks nationally.
21st, 22nd, somewhere
for
around
for QB rating or QBR?
QBR.
Okay, so QB rating. I mean, dude, like, I don't know. I'm not. I can't. I don't know how to justify a ranking like that. And I guess it's coming down to, like, you're not running the football, so you're going to be slided some. Brendan Sorsby, Jalen Daniels run the football more, so you think they're more exciting and they think they're better quarterbacks. But Sawyer's thrown for 1,700 yards and 17 TDs. And this is every single game this year, he's had 3 or more touchdown passes.
Yeah. Longest streak in the Big 12 since Kyler Murray in 2018.
I mean,
what are we doing?
Yeah. And he's thrown for against this is where I'm going for comparisons here. You've faced 4 Power 4 teams, and I understand Oklahoma State's one of those. Two of them were college football playoff teams last year. SMU's not as good as they were last year, to be determined on Arizona State. In 3 of those games, you've thrown for 393 yards or more.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever.
I couldn't believe it though, because
but it's not even a Sawyer Robertson deal.
It's not.
It's just like where are we with this?
Yeah.
Like, how are we determining this ranking?
Yeah.
Like, this is just my opinion because I've watched games and I have a computer system.
That's just where I'm with you. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that up really quick because I just
got me all hot and heavy here, man.
No, but I feel like it's something where, Sawyer's getting slighted a little bit when you talk about the Heisman race and all of these things, as he should, because the team's 3-2. Like, he's not a Heisman contender right now. But, like, let's also not act like he's not putting up insane numbers against good competition. Like, they face good teams. Yes, you can argue, well, they should have won more games. That's fine. He's played good teams. He has not gotten to play a schedule like Cincy, where they've played Bowling Green and Northwestern State as 2 of their 4 games.
Oh, even Diego Pavia, like Charleston Southern, Virginia Tech. He did beat South Carolina, where he threw for 177 yards. Georgia State and Utah State.
Yeah,
like where? I mean, and he also runs the football. So he 294 yards, 48 carries for 294. So, like, is that the reasoning for these rankings? He has him, Pavia, at number 2 on this list.
Yeah, and I'm cool with that because I do think, like, if you were drafting quarterbacks to start a team, I think he would be up there. Like, he's a winner. He's playing for a team that doesn't have a lot of talent. Like, I can understand parts of that, but yes, their schedule has been a joke outside of South Carolina.
And I'm just running through this list. Like, who am I taking? I mean, shoot, I didn't even know who Damon Williams was before today from Washington. And he's thrown for 900
numbers, yeah.
I mean, what are his numbers? 950 passing yards? He's rushed for 192.
283 on the ground,
283. I'm looking at ESPN, 192. He's beat Colorado State, UC Davis, and Washington State.
And lost to Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah, and didn't score a touchdown, negative 28 yards rushing in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. I would love to have a sit down with Bill and be like, hey, how'd you come up with this list? I mean, like, I would want to know.
Me too. Luke Altmaier is ahead of Sawyer Robertson at Illinois.
I was like, where is he?
At Illinois. He's ahead of him.
Okay. I mean, whatever. It seems like this is a very besides Vanderbilt, who's like the media darling right now.
Yes, they are.
This is just a bunch of, hey, we're going to put everybody. No, that doesn't even hold water because Sorsby's on there. Indiana's on there, which they're kind of a darling right now too. I don't know. I like this is kind of stuff that drives me crazy. Chandler Morris being on there. Congrats for beating. Who'd you beat? Clemson.
Florida State.
Florida
at
State.
Virginia in a crazy game, and he played well. But the thing on this is there's
Is it a
no
quarterback's
way,
list or a winning list? Like,
right?
what are we going through? What are we going for with this?
And if teams actually just sat back and drafted quarterbacks, this is not the list of the way these guys would be drafted.
Yeah, so
it's
that's not the criteria. What is the criteria?
Who can run? Who can run and whose record looks good despite their schedule?
I mean, freaking USC. Like that's the route we're going down. Who they just lose to? They lost to Illinois. They beat Purdue and Michigan State. I don't know.
Okay. Purdue's really bad. As someone who watches Purdue every weekend, that's not impressive.
I mean, and I'm going to go down to the bottom of this list because I'm really curious who he has at the bottom. Cade Klubnik.
Where's Cade?
54. Drew Aller. Okay, so yeah, this is very much a QBR type deal because you start getting to the bottom of this list, like QBR 35, Robbie Ashford QBR, DJ Lagway is number 61, 46 QBR. So like this is obviously a Gio Lev. Oh dang, I knew Gio was not very good, but he has a 16 QBR.
He Zane Flores is ahead of Gio Lopez, the Oklahoma State quarterback. By
he doubled him up in QBR.
Yeah,
but for real, like this is a QBR heavy. It's like at some point Bill got in this and was like, "Screw this, I'm just going to go QBR."
Yes.
So like Noah Fafita from Arizona is number 51. Oh well, no, he goes out of order here. I don't know. Like I mean, some of these are justifiable that where they are, but there's no rhyme or reason for any of this. It's just like I'm going to throw together a list. Like Bear Bachmeier. I mean, he's thrown for 697 yards, and he's number 39 ahead of Arch. I mean, which Arch hadn't been good either. So
ahead of Jackson Arnold, who just had to go to Oklahoma and to A&M and has already gone to Baylor also. I'm sure all of these quarterbacks would have had so much fun and success against those three teams to start.
Oh yeah, hit that, and then they face Georgia.
Like, they're going to be 3-3, and Baylor's loss to them is going to look bad.
Yeah, so here's Baron Morton on here, number 28, and I don't even personally like. I think Morton's a great system quarterback. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback, but at 28, I mean that's justifiable. That's not bad. Dylan Raiola 25, Rocco Beck 24, Josh Hoover 23. Yeah, I mean. I'm not even as upset about the ones down here as much as this were you not watching the Big 12? Are you not? Like I think that's my biggest hold up with this. Like to rank Jalen Daniels. Okay, so if they would have just lumped if Bill Connolly would have just lumped Brendan Sorsby, Jalen Daniels, and the rest of the Big 12 quarterbacks like in one grouping, kind of like what he did down here. It's like, oh crap, I haven't put any other Big 12 quarterbacks on here. Let me just put them 21, 23, and 24. Like, let's just put them in here real quick. And so that's what he did. Then 28. So he has 5 Big 12 quarterbacks within 5 after having 2 in the top 10. I would have been just put them all together, and it makes you seem at least reasonable.
No, he was watching Cincinnati versus Kansas, got real excited, and decided to put both of them in the top 10. That's exactly what happened. He was having a great time, and then he just went ahead and put them in there. And then, like you mentioned, he forgot that he didn't put any other Big 12 quarterbacks in until he got to 20.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, how do you go back? How do you look at Sawyer's stats from the last? So let's go back to the Texas Tech game of last year. So starting at that point, in Baylor, it was 6-1 to close. And he was throwing for, 274, 5 touchdowns. He had a 329, 3 touchdown, 445 against LSU. And like, even if this is a career type of award, how are you not considering Sawyer any higher than that?
Yeah.
And not even like, I'm just going on a ramble here, but like not compared to national, but like, how do you justify Brendan and like Jalen? They weren't even bowl teams last year, right? They
got a guy that was a D2 guy at number 3, Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss, who's playing really, really well, but like he's only doing it off of this year for sure. But it's also like,
and that's in 3 games. He's basically played that. He's been good, played 3 games.
And against tough teams too. Like he just beat LSU over the weekend.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a list that's very confusing.
We should have done our own
to me.
episode on this. Got some attention for it.
We can
Yeah.
convert into one, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do that. But all right, Colt, before I let you go this week, let's get a prediction for Baylor versus Kansas State. Who you got winning this one? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I expect Baylor to win this one, but I think we've been saying that for, this season. And we said against Auburn, we said against Arizona State. I think both of those games were games that could have gone Baylor's way. Small minor details have changed. It goes Baylor's way, and it didn't. Obviously, last second field goal against Arizona State, the closest thing to that. I like Baylor to win. I like Kansas State to cover the 6.5. So maybe Baylor winning by a field goal, winning by 4, 31-27, 34-30 type of game. I just can't see Baylor pulling away more than that, but I like Baylor to win in this game.
Yeah, I think the route that I'm going is I think Baylor's going to score pretty good in this game. I think K-State will keep up for some of it. I just think at the end of the day, I think Baylor's going to be a little bit more solid in their ground game. I think Sawyer is a good enough quarterback that he'll be able to take advantage of the opportunities when given to them by Kansas State. And I just think that Baylor is going to – my hunch is Baylor's going to go into this game with something to prove and actually play a really solid game. Not a great game, but a solid game and a good enough game that pushes them over the top against what I view as a middle of the pack, maybe below average Kansas State team in the Big 12. And so for that reason, I got Baylor win this one. I think they're going to win by a touchdown. I got them winning at 31-24. I think they get it done. Knock off Kansas State, get to 4-2, head into the bye week with some momentum, some good things to talk about. And then obviously we'll get ready for the TCU game here in a couple weeks. That's kind of how I view it, but it should be a really good one. It's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be a battle. Baylor's got to figure out a way to win these games at home. So we'll see if they can get it done. But for today, that's it from Colt, Barber, and I. We will talk to you again next week with our wrap-up of this game. And, of course, we'll have our best bets as well later on today. But thanks for listening. This has been the Bearcast on Sikkim365.com.
Join Sikkim 365 Premium on a $1 for 1 month trial to read our experts' notes and insights. Know about high school commits, off-season transfers, coaching staff changes, and so much more before the rest. Also, download the Sikkim 365 app on your iPhone today to get instant notifications of breaking news, read up on the latest inside info, easily interact with other Baylor fans on our forums, and get alerts for anything published by your favorite staff members.